Hi guys, welcome back GCMS community. It's good to see everybody. We're glad you're here and joining us if you can live. We're here to do some updates now that the school year has started and we've learned a few things and we're feeling a little bit more confident about our plans and our response to things. So we're going to share those tonight. If you have joined us before, you know our general format will be that Mr. Darnell is going to talk a little bit about where we're at and give you some updates. And as he's talking, if you have questions, we encourage you to chat them into the comments box. I will transcribe those and keep track of all the questions you might have. And then at the end, he'll make an attempt to answer any questions that come up. So I am joined here in the room by, again, I'm sorry, I'm Erin Nuss. I'm the curriculum director. I just assume everybody knows who I am now. So I'm Erin Nuss. In the room as well as Mr. Walker Willis, who is our instructional technology coordinator, and Mr. Darnell, our superintendent. So he's going to start us off with some just general words about how things have gone these first couple of weeks. And then if you do have questions, please chat them in and we'll answer them.
Good.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Jeremy Darnell, superintendent, and thanks again for everybody who took the time to tune in this evening or watches the video later since we are able to post that. So folks that aren't available at this specific time or don't use Facebook Live can also access this through YouTube. So if anybody's asking you how to get to it, just direct them that way so they can see the information as well. I just want to take a few minutes and go through some things. The good, the bad, and the ugly is actually how I wrote it on my agenda because there's some things that are awesome, some things that have been challenging, and some things that are a little bit scary. So we're going to try to address all of those and then field any questions that you may have tonight. So I like to start with the good, and I can't tell you how much of an enormous sense of relief and pride it was to get kids back in the building. There was a lot of effort that went into that, and that effort was by GCMS staff, by GCMS families, and by GCMS kids. Our kids have been absolutely amazing, so if there's any kids sitting out there with your families, I'm proud of you. You've really handled things incredibly well. Some of the things that we thought were going to be the biggest challenges or daily struggles have not been, and that's a testament to everybody's willingness to engage prior to the start of school. So kudos to everybody for making the efforts to make the start happen, and not only make it happen, but happen well. Extra shout out to our kindergarten parents. If any of you are out there, the Mrs. Nuss and I both were out at the drop-off those first few days, and your courage to be able to just handle that and trust us to take your kids inside those walls was pretty awesome. So thank you for that. So here we go. A couple of things. Our expectations, like I said, for compliance to the rules that we have to follow have been really, really good. It's funny, when we first started doing these live webinars, almost every question revolved around masks. And I can tell you that has been the least of our concerns because kids have been awesome. Parents are sending them with the kids with masks. The kids are wearing their masks. We have occasional reminders to do that the right way, but they're slim. So kudos to everybody for embracing the fact that is something that we have to do and doing it well. So thank you. Self-certification. I apologize if it gets a little bit annoying getting morning reminders, but I can tell you that people taking the time to do that at home saves us a lot of time in the morning at school. It's less people that we have to assign to get that done. It's less time that your kids are not in the start of the classroom where they're going to be receiving instruction. So we're going to keep doing those reminders on occasion until we all get those good habits formed. I will openly admit, Mrs. Nuss might be sitting over here laughing at me right now. I believe it was our remote Wednesday that I failed to self-certify because I didn't have to do my daughter's. So I forgot. And I think they actually enjoyed calling me at 8:30 saying, Mr. Darnell, did you self-certify? And I did not. So we all forget sometimes. Don't beat yourself up over that. We just want everybody to get in the habit as best as possible to do that every day. The next thing I want to talk about is just the Wednesday. We had our first remote Wednesday last week, and I hope kids and parents felt this as well. I know sometimes that's a burden for daycare and for folks having to miss work. I understand that, but I can tell you that it was essential for our staff. Because the logistical management of what we're doing right now is significantly harder than what we're used to. And having that day where you eliminate those logistics and you can focus on in the morning engaging with kids for extra support, and in the afternoon professional development and preparation to better serve the kids when they are here has been pretty important. I'm pleased with how that's gone. So hopefully your kiddos also enjoyed that, and hopefully they did some good academic engagement in the morning and then found something really cool and fun to do. I told my daughter it was almost like having 2 Fridays in the week. Tuesdays and Fridays are both Fridays now, because you have a day where you don't have to be in school. Keep the kids engaged on those days. We want them to be a continuation of learning, but we also want that to be a little bit of a deep breath for everybody. Technology. Obviously, we made some great efforts, and Mr. Willis is here with us, so I'm going to speak his praises along with Don Worthington for the efforts that they've made to make sure that we get as many devices into kids' hands as possible, and we try to make that as smooth as possible. They've worked really hard to try to get those things in place so that the kids have the resources that they need. So I greatly appreciate that, and I think we've done a good job. We went from not having a one-to-one program to having one in the matter of about 4 or 5 months, both with devices, with delivery methods, and now with staff working really hard to try to use similar platforms so that the delivery of instruction and the comfort with how we do that goes over well. So we'll keep working on that. I know it hasn't been seamless, but we're going to keep working on that. I think it's been a positive. Communication. I'm thrilled. I'm looking and I see 135 folks that are watching right now, and hopefully there's some watch parties with even more. Hopefully some families are watching it together. Watch parties socially distanced, let me be clear on that, if it's not with your immediate family. But we've tried really hard to communicate, and I know sometimes that can come across as over-communication or you're getting an awful lot of messages, but we're working really hard right now to make sure that everybody knows everything that we can share in as timely a manner as possible, and that we can kind of smooth out some of the things that were logistical challenges at the end of last year to make, if we get into a situation where we have to do more remote, that we're as prepared as possible. So please bear with us. We're not trying to annoy you. I try really hard to make sure that if I'm sending a morning message that it's not until after 6:45 in the morning. I'm not trying to wake people up. You could have much more pleasant sounds than my voice is as your alarm clock, so we'll try to keep that to a minimum, but we do need to communicate to make sure everybody's on the same page. And the best thing is in-person instruction is happening. Teachers and kids are sharing space. They're able to communicate directly. Whether that's the controlled, amazing opportunities that lots of kids are getting with elementary PE, or that's an advanced placement class at the high school. There's in-person learning taking place, and we know that's the best way to do it. And we've really appreciated the days that we've had up to this point. So probably the best thing of all of this. Kids and teachers being together just feels normal, and I think everybody needed some of that on both sides. So it's been terrific. Next, I want to shift a little bit to the bad. Some things that have been a little bit of a challenge, and we know that, and we're going to keep working. Number one is the logistics, like I mentioned earlier: cleaning, sanitizing, trying to keep space, managing absences. Those are all things that are taking a lot more time and effort. Some of that is being done by our existing staff that are assigned to those things, like custodians doing the cleaning. But now with transitions of kids, we have staff doing cleaning between every class period, whereas that used to be a time to kind of take a deep breath and to get yourself ready for the next course. Now we're doing all that cleaning on a hourly basis to make sure that we're managing the risk as much as possible. So those logistics are just making the days very intensive. You really have to be on point the entire day to make sure you're doing it right. And I appreciate and applaud the staff for doing that, because it is both physically and emotionally exhausting. But those efforts are being made so that our kids can stay in school. Attendance. Obviously, this is something that I know has been a concern. It's a concern for you as families. It's a concern for us at the school because of the guidelines that we are responsible for following. When kids miss, they could potentially miss for extended periods of time, or there's additional burdens placed on the family to get alternate diagnosis or to have negative COVID tests in order to return to school. That's the same for staff. So absences are a real concern because it's hard to manage absences. That means that we're not having that in-person engagement. That means that teachers are having to create paperwork and lessons and communications with those kids that are absent. It means kids are having to do work without the direct support of the teachers because we're not doing all those supports remotely on a daily basis. So absences are a challenge, and attendance is a challenge. Our nurses are doing an amazing job of communicating and tracking when kids have to be at home. It's not an ideal situation for anybody. It's not ideal for us not to have them here. It's not ideal for families to have to make short-term arrangements for daycare or miss work because of those things. But those are things that we have to do. We are following those guidelines and ensuring, erring on the side of caution to ensure that we're not bringing anything knowingly into our schools that could potentially spread and cause more illness for more kids. The bad also, technology. I know it was a good, but it's also bad because sometimes it doesn't work ideally. Sometimes there are glitches. I can tell you that our tech staff, Walker Willis and Don Worthington, will try to answer every single question that you provide to them to make sure that you have the supports that you need. Please be patient. We have 1,000 students, and we have 2 professionals that really exhaust themselves trying to reach out to you guys when necessary. So although it doesn't work all the time, and they will get to you as quickly as they can, they work tirelessly for very long hours every single day to make sure that there are the least amount of glitches as possible. Communication, it was a strength and a weakness again, good and a bad, because it can be a lot. We can send a lot of stuff to you, but I can tell you I will not apologize for over communicating. Because it's easier to provide that information and even be a little bit redundant than it is to have people wondering or guessing. So that's why we're here tonight, because we feel it's important that we speak directly to you, whether that be through a remind message, whether that be through social media posts, whether that be through Notes Home, email, phone calls, all calls. We have a lot of ways to communicate. We try to use those as much as possible because we know you want to know, you need to know, and we need you to stay engaged. So hopefully that's not too much of a burden on your time and not too much of a disruption to your day. And probably another one of the bad things is just uncertainty. Obviously, we are still in a time of transition. There are still new rules that come out. It hasn't been quite as fast and furious, and I think quite honestly, everybody's been so excited to be back and so focused on making that work that it's been a nice distraction to just be able to focus our energy on the day-to-day of teaching and learning. So that's been good for everybody. Now I want to talk about the ugly. And this is something that none of us want to talk about, none of us want to consider, but we need to be very aware of. I've been asked this question many, many times. In fact, we jokingly said we need to have one of those like Super Bowl boards on what day we might possibly get forced into full remote learning. Obviously, if you're watching this, you probably watch the news, which means you are probably seeing different districts that are shutting down for days, for weeks, or have gone full remote from the very beginning. And that's a very distinct possibility. I've been very transparent from the beginning that we could have a circumstance that dictates that we close down tomorrow or next Monday or in November, and we just don't know when that's going to occur. And so that makes it hard, and that's not something that's pleasant for any of us, but I hope everybody has been heeding the warnings and creating their own individual plan for what that's going to look like, because if I'm being completely honest, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I hope we can hold out as long as possible. It would thrill me to be wrong on this one, and we're in school every single day for this school year. But I do want you to be prepared for if that ugly situation does occur. Some people have asked me, is there a matrix that will dictate when we have to shut down? And there's not. We don't have a set number that's going to cause GCMS to shut down. And I'm going to use a similar analogy of the snow day because I think it's relevant here. There are days that we get 3 inches of snow that we go to school because there's no wind and the snow is fluffy and the roads aren't extremely slick. There are days that we get 3 inches of snow and the wind's blowing and the temperature's super cold and visibility is a challenge and we cancel school. This is similar. The circumstances of the situation are going to dictate whether we stay in or we go out. And that's a decision that will be made by myself in collaboration with the Board of Education and Public Health. So we will get information for all the parties that have necessary information and make that decision. And it's not going to be popular. If we shut down, it's going to create burden. it's going to eliminate what we feel is most important, which is in-person instruction. So we don't want to do that, but the circumstance may dictate that we have to. So please understand, please be prepared. Everybody's been incredibly supportive, and I know that won't be a popular decision, but it doesn't mean it's a wrong one. So hopefully that's much later, but when that situation presents itself, we will try to communicate as best we can and make an informed decision at that point in time. With our absences, and this is another thing that can be a real challenge because every situation is unique. For example, if we have a positive COVID-19 test of a student that was present in our school, we have to work with Ford County Public Health in order to do contact tracing. And what that means is how many students have been within 6 feet of a positive tested student for more than 15 minutes. Because every one of those kids then has to be removed from the school setting until they either have a 14-day quarantine or a negative test. And so if you look at our website, we do have a letter that explains that will be going home to those families that do get put into that situation. And we also have what we're calling a decision tree, which kind of dictates what you can do given the certain circumstances. So if you have not done so already, please take some time and take a look at those. Because those are things that we don't want to be put into a situation where people are questioning or challenging that when either our nurses that are on staff or our administrators or our office staff are calling to communicate an absence. It's not something that we want to do, it's something that we have to do. So please be patient with us. Please understand that those are non-negotiables for us, because when public health says we have to, we have to. And that's to keep the school open for those that are not affected. So please be patient with that. It's not a good situation. It's not a fun situation, but we appreciate everybody's understanding and grace when those situations occur. That's really all I have today. I do want to share one piece of evidence that I think is relevant for the people of this community. Last Monday, Gibson Area Hospital's COVID test clinic tested 520 people. Obviously, if you've been around on a Monday or Wednesday recently, you've seen the long lines. It's a positive thing because we have a free clinic here in town. It's hard because now it's an incredibly popular clinic. And I know Gibson Area Hospital has since decided to shorten the amount of days. They were going to continue that through September, but there's just a few days left. So we're appreciative of them doing that. But it's important to note, so on Monday, the 24th, last Monday, there were 520 people that went through that line. 56 of them tested positive for COVID-19. And only one of those was a Ford County resident. And that one person did not have a direct connection with the school district, which is good. So we didn't have to worry about excluding anybody from school for that. But if you consider the fact that 56 people came into our community that did not know that they were positive, and by the end of that day found out that they were positive, those people were in our community. They were likely in our stores. They could have eaten at our restaurants. And so I strongly encourage everybody to please follow the state mandates when you're inside and wearing your mask and maintaining social distancing. Those are the best ways that we can continue to protect ourselves, because all it takes is one or two people and one or two positive cases to really change the trajectory of what we're trying to do. It's incredibly important to me, and I know it's incredibly important to you because you're here tonight, to keep our kids in school. Well, one of the things that can help that is for us as adults to follow the same expectations that we're asking of our kids, and that's when we're in closed settings, doing the right thing and trying to do every mitigating measure that we can so that we don't put ourselves at risk. I think that's the best that we can do. I know that's not a popular statement with some. I respect the difference of opinion, but my reason for that is very simple. I want kids to be in school. And if that means that we, or other adults need to wear masks when they go into our local gas stations or our local restaurants or our local hardware stores, then we should do that out of respect for how important it is for our kids to be with our teachers. So I guess I'm asking, I'm pleading, please do that as much as you can so that we can try to stay in school as long as possible, because it's important for us and it's important for your kids. So that's all I have for today. I know Aaron's been jotting down a few things, so hopefully we have some good questions. I'll be happy to field those at this time.
Okay, I'll let you take a breath, Mr. Darnell, and say we had a couple of questions through email about upcoming schedule and calendar events. So I'll just provide a few quick updates. Labor Day is still Monday, so no matter what happens, they can't change that. So we definitely aren't coming to school. We still are having Labor Day on Monday. That doesn't change the week. So Tuesday will still be a regular in-student attendance day. Wednesday will still be remote learning, and Thursday, Friday will still proceed as normal, despite the fact that Monday is a holiday. The following, after that, next time we have a half day is September 18th. So again, that hasn't changed, just like we have in the past years had half days 4 times a year each quarter. We do have an SIP, which is School Improvement Planning Day, on September 18th. That will remain a half day. And a notice did go out today to seniors and their families. I do want to remind everyone that September 23rd is a mandatory report day for seniors, even though it's a Wednesday. Seniors will report to school to take the SAT that day. It's a state-funded SAT. They don't have to pay any money for it, but it is required for graduation. It's a graduation requirement in the state of Illinois, so all seniors have to come to school on September 23rd to test. So those are the big calendar things that get us through most of September. There were 2 sort of specific questions about what we're doing to accommodate Mr. Darnell in some of these unique situations. So what would happen, can you tell us, if a student was quarantined, they're told they have to do the 14-day quarantine, and how is the school going to accommodate certain things? Specific examples might be like driver's ed or chamber choir additions. It would trickle down. There's lots of things at different grade levels that might need to be accommodated. What are we going to do about those things?
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, that is going to be a case-by-case circumstance where we address it the best way we can in order to continue to provide services for kids. So, for example, if a child has to be quarantined for 14 days, that could translate into anywhere from 8 to 9 days of absence from school. It's one of the nice things about having those remote Wednesdays is kids can still engage on those remote days. So it would be like a traditional absence, that the teacher will provide the work, the student is expected to do that work, and then we would ask the students to or families to reach out to the teachers to keep a line of communication open to make sure that we minimize the disruption in the learning flow. So that's a hard thing because being gone for an extended period of time is hard for kids, it's hard for teachers. It creates some logistics and communications back and forth. But the nice thing is we do have some good quality platforms for communication now, so we hope that we can utilize those so that we minimize the loss of learning time there. As far as other events and activities, everyone's going to be a case by case. We want to try to create opportunities for kids to still have the positive experiences, but if it comes to a child being at risk for health and then being at school, we're going to certainly err on the side of caution and make sure that we will restrict the attendance as necessary. And that may mean that some things will be lost. Some opportunities could be lost. We'll minimize that as much as possible, but it would be presumptuous of me to say that there won't be some things that kids may not get the opportunity to do. And sadly and unfortunately, that's been something that's happened quite often over the course of the last 6 months. But we'll try to minimize that as much as possible to keep the positive experiences there for the kids. Good question.
I would be remiss if I didn't note Mr. Gerard would remind us that some of those things are also out of our control and out of our hands. So, for example, the state is the one that mandates that students must have 60 hours for driver's ed, and that isn't something that we can control. And again, in the last couple of months, we've had a lot of practice learning how to wade through things we cannot control. And unfortunately, that's just a product of the situation we're in, and we're trying to stay up to date on everything. If the state gives us waivers or gives us opportunity to work within some of those boundaries, but some of those things are things that the school district cannot control, as much as I would like to, most of the time. How about another one, Mr. Darnell, same kind of topic, if students have to be gone. Is there a reason, and can you explain the reason why we can't just put cameras in classrooms so that students could still watch what was going on and still be a part of the classroom and stay up to date by watching on a camera?
Sure, and we talked about the potential for doing that, and there are several things that are issues. Probably the biggest one is student privacy. Teachers are not sedentary. They don't sit in one place. They move around. So the ability to see and engage would be a real challenge. A teacher can't walk around the classroom every day with a GoPro pointing it at the things that are being utilized for instruction. The other piece is we do have a significant number of students whose likeness, their pictures, their photos, their videos are not allowed to be shared digitally. And so we can't determine which classes that would be acceptable and which ones aren't. So although it is a solution that some choose to engage with, we chose not to because of those privacy factors that we felt were relevant. Some people would really love to see that happen, and there are some people that would not allow their students to participate in that. So we decided to not create that additional logistical challenge for our staff because of many students who would opt to not engage in being on a video or in a screen. Good question.
We don't have a lot of other big questions trickling in right now. So if you have questions, please, now would be a great time to ask them. Otherwise, this is going to be one of our shorter district updates webinars, which is fine. But if you have questions, please throw them into the chat room. We'd love to try to answer them and find answers for you to make sure that we're tackling and communicating with all the tough questions that might be out there.
So while, real quick, to give you all a little bit more time to think about it, guys, we welcome challenging questions. We really do. Critical questions coming from community, coming from parents, coming from students are important for us to make sure that we're considering all angles when making decisions, when creating policies, when creating practice. So we don't shy away from those things. You won't always get the response or the answer that you like because we have to make decisions based on the total scope of a circumstance. But we certainly encourage people to ask those questions. If you do so in a respectful manner, even if it's something that is challenging, whether that's professionally challenging to a building or to a policy or a practice, whether that be for me as a superintendent, Mrs. Nuss as the curriculum director, Mr. Willis as our instructional technologist, we're not afraid of you asking us hard questions. Be prepared for the answer. Sometimes the answer is going to be, hey, we didn't think of that. Thank you very much. You've really helped us out here. Or we did think of that, and I'm sorry we can't change our practice. So I encourage you to keep asking those questions. I make it very public what my phone number is, what my email is. All of our emails at the district are public knowledge. We want people to be engaged. We want people to be involved. And if you want that, you certainly can't only ask for the praises. We want the critiques as well. That helps us to be better.
So we've got a good one here about internet access and what we can do in those situations. So I'll start off and I'll let you talk a little bit. The question is, what if our internet service is kind of questionable? Sometimes it's slow. Our teacher's going to be mad at kids for not doing assignments as quickly or as on time. And I'll share a couple of quick, just local resources that we do have if your internet home is not reliable or month to month is not known. You know, the public library does have internet access, and people are welcome in the public library to go in and utilize the free Wi-Fi that's available there, or even in the parking lot. If the hours of the public library aren't accommodating to your schedule, you can access the Wi-Fi in the parking lot. Our town also has Wi-Fi within Gibson City in the downtown area and in some of the public parks. So those are both places where you can access Wi-Fi if needed. However, if you also need help with Wi-Fi at home, you can feel free to reach out to us and we'll work with you to try and find a solution that works for your family if you qualify and meet some of the parameters that are necessary. What would you say, Mr. Darnell, about the idea of how are teachers going to respond if students are not doing things as quickly or on time?
So one of the things that I can tell you, and this is true of education, it's been true whether it's instruction through technology or if it's instruction in the classroom, making accommodations is the norm in our profession. We try to meet kids where they are. We try to work with kids and their struggles. We work with families and their struggles. So don't be afraid to ask for time, to ask for support, but most importantly, stay engaged with the teachers. Don't assume that there's not an opportunity to receive additional support. The technology access is a great example. If you're struggling or if you know of someone who's struggling to have technology access, reach out because we will try to find a way to help. That's what we're here for, because at the end of the day, we don't want obstacles out of your control to hinder your kid's ability to be able to do the work. I would compare it to a pencil. I can remember when it used to be children would get disciplined if they didn't have a pencil in school. Well, you don't get to do your math homework today. Well, that doesn't do a whole lot of good. So when we're in a classroom and a child doesn't have a pencil, we hand them one. If you don't have technology and you need help with access to that, then you need to talk to us and we'll see what we can do to help that. We want to remove the obstacles from our kids because our kids deserve the opportunity to get as much educational opportunity as possible. So reach out to us, we will try to help. If we can't help, we will try to point you in a direction for the resources that are out there so that you can access those. Our community is absolutely amazing. We recently had a donation of $10,000 to children who were struggling because of COVID-19. And that's an amazing amount of money that can do an enormous amount of good. So our community is fantastic, whether it's the food pantry at Gibson Area Hospital that provides backpacks of meals for our kids, or if it's individual donations that provide additional resources, or if it's the Board of Education making the commitment to purchase literally hundreds of Chromebooks to make sure that kids have the resources. That's what we're here for. We are here to provide that education. It's not as traditional as it used to be, and we're trying to make all those accommodations as best we can.
I like your metaphor, Mr. Darnell. You know I always appreciate it. A couple of questions about policy. If I'm keeping my child at home, one of them, do I need to keep them all at home?
So that's a complicated question because if you have a child who has COVID-like symptoms and there is any possibility that it could be COVID, then yes, I would encourage you to keep all of your children home until you either have a negative test or an alternative diagnosis. And the reason I say that is every one of us is better served erring on the side of caution and missing a day or 2 days or 4 days in order to get guaranteed information that our children are not sick and sick in a way that could spread and cause further burden on other children and other families. So I encourage you to err on the side of caution in that circumstance. I know that's challenging, but I think if we all recognize that it's not just a responsibility to your children, it's a responsibility to all the kids at the school and the kids that your kids have contact with, I think it's the responsible thing to do. So I would encourage everybody to err on the side of caution, take advantage of the communications that we have with your children's teachers to keep up. I would rather have a kid miss a day or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days than to be gone for 14 days. So making that judgment is a family decision. We appreciate your honesty. We appreciate your cooperation. If in doubt, keep them home and call and talk to our nurses, call and talk to your primary care physicians, and make sure that you're making a good informed decision.
Good deal. Can you talk a little bit about sporting events? And guardians and siblings are the only ones that are still encouraged to attend sporting events, or are we allowing others as long as they're wearing a mask and social distancing? Where are we at with that, please?
So that's a great question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. So the way that it works is very simply, the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines state that you can have 50 people in a group in an outdoor setting. But you can't have more than 50 people unless there's 30 feet of separation between those people. So if you look at, for example, baseball and softball are going on right now at our middle school. We have the entire outfield area. It's a really large area where people can spread out. And by and large, families have done a good job of staying in their family units and staying spread out. Because we are outdoors, if you are social distance or you're only with your family unit, you do not have to wear a mask. If you are not able to social distance or you are in close contact, you are supposed to wear a mask. It's the ideal situation is that it is parents and siblings. And the reason for that, if you think about a softball game, there are 36 kids on a team, on the two teams, 4 coaches. If every person brings 3 people, we're nearing 150 people in those spaces. If you start to get much over that, then we're pushing the limits of what we can allow at that event. And what I do not want to have to do is to shut down all fans because people won't adhere. If a family shows up with 20 family members and everybody does that, we eliminate the ability for anybody to watch their children. And that's not fair. So what we're asking everybody to do is to make that hard decision to allow for parents to come, to allow for brothers and sisters to come, but to not extend that beyond that, because if you bring too many yourself or someone else does, it places that burden. The other thing I do not want to have to do, either myself or those administrators that are on duty, is we don't want to get into an argument over somebody who wants to come watch their grandchild or their nephew or their niece or their neighbor. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is be respectful to all kids that are participating and make sure that everyone can have someone, and that no one or an individual or a family takes advantage of that situation and puts us into a situation where we don't have a choice but to either eliminate competition or eliminate fans, because that's not good for anybody. So please make good informed decisions. Try to comply with those expectations and recommendations so the kids can continue to have the support of families. That's a really hard thing for GCMS because our crowds, our fans are amazing. We are always bigger crowds than anywhere else. This isn't the time to prove that because we want to make sure that everybody can be seen. So I appreciate you respecting that.
Not a lot of other questions still coming in. I'll toss one more at you. If you do have a question, now's your chance. Please chat it in so that we can get it answered, so you're not just wondering or hearing things that aren't necessarily from the source. Can you tell us just a little bit, Mr. Darnell, more about the practice contact tracing that the schools did within the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had the fortunate situation where we wanted to do a test run that if a student had a positive diagnosis, how many kids and how would we track who they've been in close contact with. Again, close contact is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. So we did that at each of the 3 buildings, and it can have a pretty significant effect on our student populations. Especially at the high school and middle school where we have rotations of classes, because we do the best we can to physically space kids out, but because of the physical parameters of our facilities, sometimes kids do have to sit closer than 6 feet. It's one of the reasons why I've been so impressed with our kids' ability to wear masks, with our teachers' ability to do the in-between classes disinfecting, because I think we're going to do a really good job of minimizing the risk of spread on our premises. So I think we're doing the right thing. But that does not change the rules that if you're in close contact that you have to be excluded. It could be as many as 20 to 30 additional children that could be excluded if we have a positive case. So it's a known risk that we could have quite a few. And so just be prepared for that. Like I said, I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. We will have a circumstance that we have to handle that. It could be something that ends up having 20 to 30 kids that have to be removed, or if there's enough exposure, it could be a strong enough exposure that we decide that it's in the best interest of the entire district to close down for a duration of time to allow for some separation of space. So those are things, again, they're going to be a case-by-case basis, but understand that when we do that contact tracing, it could have a significant effect on quite a few families.
So I think the two of us maybe can tag team on this one because it is a big question. If the situation occurs where GCMS students have to go into full remote learning, do we have a plan yet that's shareable, assuming that that's going to look different than what full remote learning looked like last year in March through May? And can we share a little bit about what that might look like? So I'll start off and say that in terms of curriculum, what that would look like is what we call flipped classroom. So yes, we have a plan, and yes, we are ready, and we're talking a lot about what full remote learning might look like. But the reality of what it looks like is it looks like the opposite of what in-person learning looks like. So instead of having your kids on a computer for 8 hours a day engaging with the teacher the entire time, it's probably going to be your kid on a computer engaging with content the entire time, not necessarily in a classroom situation. So that idea of a full remote learning schedule doesn't mean that your student's going to be in a seat and a desk on a computer from 8:30 to 9:30 with one teacher, a different teacher from 9:30 to 10:30, and the entire day like that. A lot of the curriculum and knowledge that they're going to gain is going to be through engaging with different forms of technology. So we might send videos home that show you how to do something, and it might be a short 5-minute video that shows you how to use the Pythagorean theorem, and then ask the student to practice that for a while. And then come back, and then you have a class meeting one-on-one with the teacher to talk about your application of the Pythagorean theorem. That was a reach. I'm an English teacher by trade, so I'm really proud of the fact that I didn't pronounce Pythagorean correctly. But it's going to look different. It's going to be flipped around. We're not going to try and use our standard in-person model and all of a sudden just push that onto a computer, because we're not going to expect our kindergarten students to sit in front of their computer from 8 o'clock until 3:30 every day. So the content delivery is going to look very different in a full remote situation, and we are talking about that a lot. Mr. Darnell, would you add to that?
Sure. I know that's something that a lot of folks are anxious to see a more definitive plan. I can tell you that we are going to be getting more information out on that very soon. We actually have a meeting on Wednesday to kind of finalize a few things, and then we'll be delivering some information out to folks. The most important thing for the remote learning is going to be active engagement by kids and families, whether that's through Google Classroom, whether that's through Seesaw, whether that's through notifications on individual classroom levels through Remind, whether that's going to be global communications through our app and our website and our social media platforms. Just please stay engaged, because it's going to have to be a back and forth communication. It's not just us dictating out, and that's going to be essential for families. That's going to be essential for kids. Making sure that you are actively engaged with what your teachers are asking you to do, making sure that you are expecting your children to work independently on that work and coming prepared with questions for the time they do have direct dialogue with their teachers. Mrs. Nuss nailed it right on the head. It's something that's going to be different. There are going to be higher levels of expectations for the engagement. Attendance will be required, and the attendance is not necessarily physical attendance as much as it is being engaged with the activities that are provided. So start encouraging your kids now, and you can do that by modeling that expectation on Wednesdays. It's one of the other reasons we felt those Wednesdays were essential at the start of the school year. We can kind of see who are the ones that are going to stay engaged, who are the ones that are going to do the things that we ask them to do, and who are the ones that we're going to have to reach out and try to support to make sure that they get engaged should we go to a full remote situation.
A question about Chromebooks and what our plan is moving forward for everybody. Well, I was told there were enough Chromebooks for each student, but then also told that there's only one allowed per household. So can we explain a little bit more about where we're at with that, please? So
yeah,
you can
sure.
tackle that if you want to.
Yeah, you bet. So here's a circumstance. So obviously every 4th through 12th grader has a Chromebook assigned to them. And the one thing that we have to recognize is the necessity and the amount of time that's going to be expected to be utilizing technology. 4th through 12th graders are at a different level. 12th graders are at a different level than 4th graders. It's the reason why we don't send them home every single day with 4th and 5th graders, because it's one piece of the puzzle. It's one tool that we use for instruction. So we don't expect them to be engaged with that nonstop. Our younger kids are not going to need those resources as much. Will they need them? Yes, they will. So will every single child have a district-issued pre-K through 3rd grade? No, they will not. It depends on the circumstances of that family. Do they need it? Do they have siblings in the home that have devices? We want to make sure that every single child has a device. If we're in school and we need to get devices to all kids, we can. If we go to a long-term remote situation, we will make sure that every family has the resources that they need. That doesn't necessarily mean a direct one-to-one, but it does mean that there will be devices available to all kids.
Good deal. I don't see a lot of other questions coming in at this point. It seems like we're maybe wrapping it up. Do you want to give us any final thoughts? And then we'll share that you are always welcome to reach out to any of us if you have questions that we haven't answered here.
No, I think just thanks for taking the time. Thanks for listening to both the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is such a unique circumstance. I'm proud of the way that we've handled it up to this point. I feel like it has been a partnership. I feel like the expectations laid out by the district were met by families. They've been met by kids. I feel like we're doing things well. I think we still have a pretty steep learning curve out there for making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row, whether that's for our current new practice for in-person learning, or if we do shift to remote. So keep the good questions coming. Stay positive. Keep encouraging your kids. Take advantage of the time that you have, whether that's on weekends that you wouldn't have had before because some of the things that we used to really enjoy aren't there. So find new ways to bring joy in your family. Find ways to stay engaged both with the academic aspect of school, but also the other opportunities that we're trying to present and provide for your kids. Because so far, in a pretty challenging time, we've had a pretty amazing 3 weeks. and I'm proud of what we've done. So thank you for all of your engagement. Thanks for being a part of a district that I'm very proud of, and a lot of folks that have put a lot of time and energy and effort in to making this happen. Have a great week, and we'll touch back with you all via this mechanism, I'm sure, at some point in the month to come. Have a great night.
Good night.